Welcome back to episode 6. Today, we're diving into something that, honestly, still gives me a bit of anxiety to think about. We're uncovering a silent threat that was quietly, almost invisibly, draining our bakery without us even knowing it. It didn't look like a big problem at first. It didn't scream for attention. But it was a mistake that stealthily cost us a significant chunk of money. But first, let's just quickly look back at our journey so far, because it really sets the stage for how we got blindsided. As we discussed in past episodes, we started with a solid idea, choosing food because, well, people have to eat every day, right? We got properly trained, assuming knowing how to bake meant knowing how to run a business. We got the whole setup going, riding that high of our first sales and building momentum. But then, we hit a massive wall. The doubt crept in. We realized that at the end of the day, we couldn't even accurately calculate our profit. We were literally flying blind, running purely on assumptions. Section 1. Tracking just one product. So to figure out why we had so much doubt, we had to stop looking at the entire massive bakery operation. It was just too overwhelming. We zoomed in on just a few items here and there. You know how it is in production. A tray doesn't fully sell. A couple of pieces get given out as samples. One or two items get burnt. Some items just aren't accounted for. Honestly, at first, these small discrepancies seemed completely normal to us. We just figured, hey, that's the standard cost of doing business. Nothing alarming, nothing urgent. But that lingering doubt about our profit wouldn't leave us alone. So we made a choice. We picked one product, just one. And we told ourselves, okay, let's track this properly for a few days. No more guessing, no more relying on our exhausted memories after a long shift. Just cold, hard facts. The plan was incredibly simple. Step 1, record exactly what we produced. Step 2, record exactly what we sold. And step 3, count exactly what was left over. Simple, right? Or at least so we thought. Section 2, the uncomfortable truth. By the end of the very first few days of tracking, something felt really off. The numbers just didn't align. We produced a certain quantity, but when we combined our total sales and the leftovers on the shelf, what we could actually account for simply didn't match what came out of the oven. Now, human nature is funny. At first, we totally tried to rationalize it. We assumed it was just a mistake on our end. We'd say things like, well, maybe we counted wrong, or maybe the sales weren't fully recorded during the morning rush, or hey, it's just one of those crazy days. We literally gave ourselves every excuse to avoid the reality of what was happening. But then, we kept tracking, day after day. Day 1, we noticed the gap. Day 2, the gap was still there. By day 3, the pattern was locked in, and it refused to change. The math wasn't wrong. Our counting wasn't the issue. Our product was consistently vanishing. Section 3, the quiet drain. There was always a gap. Now, it wasn't big enough to cause a massive panic on any given afternoon, but it was way too consistent to ignore anymore. So we did the really uncomfortable thing. We sat down, stopped looking at just the daily numbers, and finally calculated it over time. We asked the heavy question, how much is this gap actually costing us? When we added it up over time, that's when it hit us like a punch to the gut. Over 39,000 naira was just gone, poof. And remember, this was from just one single product. We were sweating in that bakery every day trying to build a business, and this huge chunk of money was just slipping right through our fingers. And to be clear, this money wasn't stolen in some dramatic robbery. It wasn't reinvested back into the business. It wasn't a planned expense. It was just lost. A little unaccounted waste here, an unrecorded sample there. And the absolute worst part? We had absolutely no idea it was happening. Because the loss wasn't loud. It didn't show up as some big, catastrophic failure. It didn't stop our daily operations, and it certainly didn't trigger any alarms. We still had customers lining up. We were busy, but it just quietly, steadily drained the business. Section 4, the problem was visibility. That was the heavy moment when everything became very, very real for us. Because we suddenly understood something crystal clear. The problem wasn't our effort. We were working incredibly hard. And the problem wasn't sales. People were buying. The real problem was our visibility. We couldn't see what was actually happening inside our own walls. And what you can't see, you simply can't fix. That realization, honestly, it was terrifying because it forced us to ask an even bigger, much scarier question. Think about it. if just one single product could lose that much money without us even noticing, what about everything else? What about the entire bakery? That single question completely changed how we saw our business. We immediately stopped asking our old question, how do we sell more? Because if you're leaking money, selling more just means you bleed out faster. Instead, we started asking a new question. What exactly is happening inside this business? Section 5, time to stop guessing. That new question led us straight into the next major phase of our journey. We realized our focus couldn't just be on production or sales anymore. We needed systems. Because we realized something absolutely critical. A system is just a structured way to see a business clearly. And if we didn't build a way to see our business clearly and prevent this silent loss of money, we were just going to keep bleeding cash. At that point, we honestly didn't know exactly what those systems would look like yet. We were still figuring it out. But we knew one thing for sure. We could not go back to guessing. Hope is not a business strategy. Which brings us to the end of today's story. Watch out for our next episode, The Decision to Stop Guessing, where we finally decide to stop living in the dark and start actually building the systems we desperately needed. So I'll leave you with this. Are you running your business on facts, or are you trusting assumptions? Don't let your hard work quietly drain away. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the exact moment the next episode drops. See you next time.